Returning from the zone, that would be the Austin Robotaxi zone, is our own Cern Basher. Cern, how many rides did you end up getting in?
Only seven,
Only seven.
but they were seven incredibly boring rides. The robotaxi worked as it should. There was nothing exciting. I even forgot that there was not a driver in the car.
Right.
And the funny thing, Randy, that the most impactful thing I think that I brought away from being there is that everybody else on the road is blissfully unaware that there's no one in the driver's seat in the Teslas. They are doing their own thing. They're going about town. They're on their phones. They're doing whatever they do while they're driving.
Right.
And they don't even notice that there's no one behind the wheel,
Right.
except for one guy.
Oh, one guy.
He was a bus driver.
Ah,
And he's pulling out from his bus stop, getting back into the lane, and he happens to look into our vehicle as we pass by going the other direction.
right.
And the look on his face was one of absolute shock and terror. It was priceless. I wish I would have had my camera ready. He was shocked. But that was one person out of
Yeah.
thousands that had the opportunity to see inside the
Yes.
car.
And who doesn't apparently read the news at all?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
So that was interesting to me. I think that the robotaxi will just blend into normal life and it'll be a normal thing very quickly.
so what about, I don't suppose you picked up local newspapers during that time. Be kind of fun. I was wondering if the local news was, giving a lot of coverage to this event.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know what the local news was doing. I was pretty busy doing the things that I was working on.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of fun to go find out what what the local Austin newspaper was
Hmm.
reporting. And okay, and then just to give her a little publicity here, I understand we have another video coming out from the spouse,
Yes,
the spouse of
yes.
CERN. Yes.
Yes, my wife has been working on a robotaxi video. It's been a labor of love for her for the last several weeks. So,
Okay. That'll
yeah,
that'll be coming out soon.
stay tuned. I don't have a date. Could
No
be two
date.
weeks. Who knows? Yeah.
Probably, probably 2 weeks. All right. So then I did want to cover one other thing before we get into your slides, Sherm, because I was very impressed. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the Connecting the Dots video.
I have.
Okay. And I was very impressed. I was very impressed by the whole thing, quite frankly. But I was most impressed by his zone concept,
Hmm.
charging that the 420 that is currently being charged in Austin would become a zone charge. And as I've been thinking about it overnight, I thought, well, those zones don't have to be 4 miles per connecting the dots. They could be 3 miles. They could be 2.5 miles.
Right.
They can be different sizes actually in different places. But they would give the consumer a kind of a starting point, a much better idea of what the ride is going to cost than the current. Who knows? I mean, it's like push the button and oh, it's $12. Oh, push it 15 minutes later and it's 750. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's lots of opportunity for Tesla to innovate here and find out what the optimal pricing strategy is. Remember back in the old days with the taxi, you get in the taxi, there's a cost just to get in.
Right.
And then even when the taxi's just sitting, going nowhere, sitting in traffic, you're racking up per minute charges. So with that, you never really knew what you were going to pay. It depended on
Right.
how long the trip took and how far it was. And there was always a bit of a surprise at the end about how much it was. Along came Uber and had a bit more surety in terms of pricing. At least
Right.
you kind of knew up front, right? But then you've got the issue of drivers accepting the ride and then canceling it and dealing with drivers you might not really want to be in a car with, et cetera, plus the tipping issue. So now Tesla has an opportunity to sort of wipe the slate clean of all those issues.
Hmm.
And so zone pricing, I think, could be interesting in certain places. Ultimately, it does come down to kind of a per mile cost.
Hmm.
Tesla's cost structure is largely on a per mile basis,
Right.
right? With charging and replacing of tires and that kind of thing, right? And the life of the vehicle is only
Hmm.
going to last so many miles,
Hmm.
probably many more than most people think, but it's kind of a per mile cost structure. So in my opinion, it does still make sense for Tesla to largely price based on that, but maybe in terms of, city cores, maybe it's more of a zone type
Mhm.
thing. Or I guess it could be, you go from zone A to zone B, and that's a certain fixed cost too.
Right.
Why not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of his idea, of course, is if you go more than, in his case, more than 4 miles. Well, no, not if you go more than 4 miles. If you move into the next zone,
Yeah.
you get another 420 charge, and subways and such kind of work on that basis. Anyway, we don't know what Tesla's going to do, but I thought it was very outside the box for connecting the dots to to pull that out of what's happening in Austin and go, hey, maybe this is a great way to go.
He connected the dots of the box and then went outside the box. Is that what you're saying?
Something like that. Something like
Yeah.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think when Elon introduced the 420 pricing, I think he indicated it was temporary, but maybe it's not.
And he could actually potentially have heard about the connecting the dots idea, and that could change everything.
Could be.
Could be.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
know.
it'll be fun for Tesla, I think, to experiment with that and find out what resonates with people.
Right.
There's a whole surge pricing issue. There is the economic reality of at certain times of high demand, you could extract a lot more value for the trip,
Right.
but people hate that,
Yes. Yes.
right? But it works the same thing with airline tickets. You pay more when the demand is higher.
Exactly. Or hotel rooms, etc.
Yeah, gasoline as well. When the demand for gasoline is higher in the summer, it costs more.
Right. Right. Yeah, we were in Paris, and there was a protest, and because of the protest, you couldn't cross the bridge, any of the bridges. Kept going from bridge to bridge to bridge, and our $20 ride turned into a $170 ride.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
this is not good. That was Uber. That was Uber in Paris. My other question before we get in the slides, just one more before we get in the slides. I know, folks, you want the slides. I know that's what you came here for, was the slides. But my other question is, what do you think will be the catalyst that springs FOMO in terms of robotaxi? I thought it was just going to be the very launch or even the promise of the launch, but neither one of those has made the FOMO happen. What do you think? Where do you think people will finally believe that this is going to be a million, rideshare business by next year?
Well, the answer that I would hang my hat on is, again, the same experience that NVIDIA went through when it finally shows up in the earnings and it's big enough and growing fast enough that you cannot ignore it.
I see.
That's for sure. So whenever that happens, for sure by then, right?
Right.
And that's debatable about how big does it need to be before, even Tesla, reports its own robotaxi division numbers. Like, are they going to just bury it in auto and not really tell us much initially? Probably. Or services or whatever they put it. But once the profit margin of services goes beyond autos and goes beyond energy, then we know something's happening, right? Because the current services business does not have that potential.
Right.
As great as supercharging it and as great as the Tesla service team is, it does not have that kind of margin potential. So the question is, though, could it happen sooner than that? And I think the answer is yes. Right. Obviously, it didn't happen just on the introduction because the mainstream media did a pretty good hit job of sort of pointing out all the issues with it.
Right.
Right. And then saying how far Waymo is ahead and all this stuff. So the public at large has no clue about what's really happening here.
Right.
We have this wonderful disconnect between those people in the know about what's coming and everybody else who doesn't know. And at what point is there a tipping point with all that? And that remains to be seen. But I can say, I think, with strong likelihood in terms of the stock price and what's going to drive that, we don't need the general public at large to be aware of that. We just need the financial community to be aware. And once we have strong earnings and earnings growth, they can't ignore it anymore.
Right. So Bank of America might be the place to start, since they just put out a huge article on autonomous vehicles, talking about all the potential in autonomous vehicles. didn't mention Tesla once in the entire article, even under possible investment strategies.
That takes a real effort to not mention Tesla at this point. Yeah.
So, or either that or a lack of awareness. I mean, I don't know. I just
No, that's intentional. There's no
yeah,
analyst that is that stupid. They've been told to not include Tesla. Right. Like this is what Tesla's up against is
yeah,
a concerted effort to minimize them in so many ways
yeah,
and
yeah.
misreport and all the attacks that Tesla's faced.
Unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, okay. With all of that, I will turn the project and program over to you and the famous CERN slides.
Well, you might regret that, but here we go.
Okay.
First of all, Randy, happy Independence Day.
All right. Happy
I'm
Independence.
assuming this will air on July 4th.
Maybe.
Uh,
Yeah, maybe or maybe
okay, well then happy pre-Independence Day then if it
pre-Independence
airs
Day.
tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so this is one day of the year the market's closed and the bulls and the bears can celebrate together.
That's right.
It's kind of amazing how they get along with each other occasionally. Only when the market's closed, I guess.
Only when the market's closed.
Yeah. But we just had Canada Day a couple days ago, and
Ah,
so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. I grew up in Canada,
right,
so happy Canada Day to our northern neighbors.
right.
And I'm sorry if this cartoon, doesn't hit very well with you, but it's kind of funny.
Well, oh, Canada, that's really funny. So when they become the 51st state, then, this will all change.
Well, it could, and again, you're not making any friends with Canadians by saying that, Randy. But yes, there are some Canadians that would hope for that, and
Yes.
probably the majority that would not. They are, um, you know, they want to maintain their own country, their own sovereignty, if possible.
Right, right. Yes.
Yeah. And this was good too. Apparently, we have some new Cybertruck accessories. Couple of bears now. You can
Oh,
get
I
some
see.
bears.
That's what we got. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and this kind of relates to the bull bear
There, yeah.
image in the
Yeah, there
first
you
slide.
go. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm getting it.
Um, yeah. But my response to this was this. This is
Oh.
kind of how the bears felt when they saw the Cybertruck in 2001, Space
Yeah,
Odyssey.
so yeah, you should have never said that.
Oh,
It's kind of like giving away the joke.
well, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, sir.
All right. Well, with that, then we'll get back to the mundane. So here's my disclaimer. All right. Randy, I'm not sure if you noticed, but we had a production and delivery report
Oh,
yesterday.
did we?
Yeah. Um, and by the way, some people want me to take you to task on your trading activity. I won't do that. I think that you have covered that yourself very nicely.
Okay, all right.
Okay. But, there were some comments about, my boy Randy, that I should, you know, put I should, yeah, whatever. We'll let that sit. I think that you've probably eaten enough crow and discussed that enough. I won't put any more pressure on you.
Well,
Yeah.
it was a fun experience for the last couple of days, but
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at I'm not a traitor. I am a trader, or I was at least for 2 days.
The financial markets always teach us lessons, and some of them are
Yeah,
more painful than others.
some are.
Yeah. Anyway, we now have production of Teslas have crossed over 8 million vehicles.
Yeah,
Pretty nice milestone,
that's true.
right? And we'll be at 10 million before you know it. But from a delivery perspective, we're just shy of 8 million. And I ran some quick calculations. If Tesla delivers, let's say 400,000 vehicles a quarter, it's 4,444 a day. We would get to 8 million by July 8th.
I see. Okay.
But given the production shutdown,
Uh,
Texas, given, a lot of vehicles are put on ships in the beginning of the quarter,
right.
it's not an even number that's delivered every day.
Hmm.
So my best guess is probably mid-July at the earliest, and maybe towards the latter half of July before we get the 8 million announcement.
Okay. All right.
Okay? And we'll see if they actually tell us who that person is. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be.
And maybe if we're lucky, the vehicle actually drives itself to that person. That would be even more fun for the second time. And then another thing that some of us care about is energy.
Right.
And a lot of people sort of remarked that the second quarter energy this year really didn't grow much versus second quarter last year.
Yeah.
We had 9.6 gigawatt hours of energy deployed
Yep.
versus 9.4 in the second quarter of 2024.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people say, well, that's disappointing. Well, I mean, look how much of an increase this was. This was a more than more
Right.
than 100% quarter
Right.
to quarter gain. This was a breakout quarter.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we know the energy business is lumpy for all kinds of different reasons.
Yep.
And so the fact that this, wasn't that much higher doesn't really bother me. It probably means we're going to get a very strong Q3 and Q4.
I would think so.
And I think, as you pointed out in your show this morning, it probably means that there's not much in the way of Chinese, the Shanghai mega factory numbers in these numbers yet.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So,
And I said I misspoke yesterday, so I should acknowledge that. Yesterday I said that it was double last year's first half, but in fact it's more like a 60%, 50, 60% increase over the first half. But that's not bad for the first half.
yeah, I like to look at it on a trailing 12-month period,
Oh, okay.
and that kind of gets out some of the lumpiness that you have quarter to quarter.
Hmm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like 84% year-over-year growth.
Okay.
So pretty healthy.
Right.
Now, had been growing faster than that, but again, that's just a lumpiness in the business.
Right.
So even smoothing it out over rolling 12-month periods doesn't get all the lumpiness out.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it wouldn't be shocking to see next quarter at 15.
Yeah.
We also had an increase in production in the power walls. So
Yeah.
it won't contribute huge, but it will contribute.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the capacity of Lathrop is supposed to be 40 gigawatt hours.
Right.
The capacity of Shanghai is supposed to be 40, so there's 80. And then Powerwall is another 10 to 15,
Yeah.
right? So it's interesting because the total capacity, let's call it 90,
Right.
okay, in any given year, the cumulative storage deployed is not yet at 90.
Oh, interesting.
And yet we now have capacity that's in that
In that range
range.
for 90 a year. Yeah.
Right. Now, the other interesting thing is we just crossed 80 gigawatt hours deployed.
Hmm.
Okay. And we were at 40 in sort of Q2 last year.
Hmm. Hmm.
So half of the total storage deployed has happened in the last 12 months.
Right.
So you tell me the business is not growing.
Yeah.
It's growing rapidly and will continue to grow as they're adding more capacity. They're building another MegaPack factory outside of Houston.
Right.
Right. So,
I don't
by the
know.
way, Randy, they
Yes.
announced that they're selling power walls now in Ireland.
Oh, Powerwall's in Ireland. Look at that.
And my joke with that was that the Irish can now drink cold beer. And somebody from Ireland had a good retort and said, well, we don't need to chill our beer. We actually have beer that tastes good,
I
unlike the stuff
see.
we have in the United States.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Fair
Well,
comment.
I don't know. Maybe you have a slide to cover this later, but Elon said something about a gigafactory to make solar panels.
It's
Uh,
coming. You're getting
Coming.
ahead of me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I am. Okay. I won't. I'll shut up.
No, no, Randy, every thought that you have is in these charts. That's a scary thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it's scary. Scary.
All right. Well, speaking of robotaxi, coming back from Austin, it was pretty cool to be there and see that. It'll be fun to tell my grandkids one day that the system of
Yeah.
transportation that they rely on, that I was one of the first 25, 30 people to experience it,
Yeah.
even though it was pretty boring,
Yeah. Right.
right? But it appears now that they're working on validating an area that's outside the geofenced area to expand the service area.
Right.
This video that I'm just showing an image of here was taken in downtown Austin last night. And so they've got Model Ys, and they've also got Cybertruck with these rigs on top.
Yeah.
Okay. So there seems to be a lot of confusion actually about what Tesla's doing here. Some of the comments that I saw was, well, I thought that Tesla's FSD worked anywhere. Why do they have to map the streets?
Hmm.
to have, to expand their service? And the answer is they don't. And the answer also is that they're not really mapping things. What they're doing here, and this is a good explanation,
Oh, okay.
is Tesla's rooftop rigs on Model Ys in Austin are for sensor validation before expanding the robotaxi geofence. They compare LiDAR and GPS ground truth to the vision-only FSD to ensure safety, refine neural nets, and boost performance in new urban zones. So because this is early days of robotaxi, it's wise for them to be very cautious. And so they want to make sure that what they're getting out of their vision-only FSD system does match with what other systems would show. And so this is just a good test for them. And by the way, when I was in Austin, I saw lots of validation vehicles for Zoox. Um, and so Austin is kind of ground zero for autonomous vehicles right now.
So based on that, Cern, would you think that this is something they will have to do in every place in the country, or is this something that will be slowly but surely phased out as they see that the validation is 99% correct from the get-go?
I think it's more of the latter.
Okay.
I think it may require some validation in certain areas where the roads are very different traffic signals, and so on. So, as they expand and as they have a bigger network, the amount of validation I think they have to do probably is less over time. Okay. But again, there's going to be some unique places like Hawaii with their blue stop signs, for example, in certain places, I understand, where you might want to validate that and make sure the system's working properly.
Okay.
Right. Or in the case of Melbourne, Australia, if you want to turn right, you have to first go left and then cross traffic, like just different things that we find in different areas.
Yeah, there's a couple of places in the United States. I think in the United States they have that. The left and then right. Yeah. Or you go across. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually had it's interesting. One of the criticisms of robotaxi in Austin was that it went in the wrong lane a few times.
Yeah.
And this was my first time driving in Austin. And I went in the wrong lane several times as a human driver. Right. And you quickly correct it.
Yeah.
And it's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But it happens. The other thing too that was interesting was I was at a stoplight waiting to turn right, and the light turned green, and I had it on FSD, and I was like, "Why isn't FSD moving? Why am I just sitting here?"
Yeah.
Okay, and so then I pressed the accelerator to get it to move, and it did. But there was actually a turn light for the right-hand turn because there was a bike lane next to me.
Oh.
And that turn light was still red.
Oh.
Right. So driving in Austin for the first time, I was sort of unaware of that. And I forced FSD to do something that it wasn't going to do. So it's interesting that as a human driver, you think you have a green light, you think you can turn right. And yet FSD, my FSD has never been in Austin before, my Cybertruck, and it was working perfectly.
Right. Wow.
So yeah. All right. So let's move on to Norway.
Okay.
And as Elon says here, as goes Norway, so goes the rest of the world. Norwegians would love to hear that.
Right.
And he says combustion engine cars will be like the steam engine, quaint but primitive. And this is responding to Alexander's post here. So in Norway, 97% of all cars sold in June were EV. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is kind of interesting. This is some estimates here about when countries will reach 80% battery electric vehicle market share. And in Norway, they're already there. They reached that in 2022. Denmark is next up. They're expected to reach that in 2026. And then Singapore and Indonesia in 2027. Indonesia is surprising for me.
Yeah.
Pretty big country.
Yeah.
Sweden and Finland, not surprising, in 2028. Right. Belgium, 29. Turkey, Luxembourg, and Uruguay in 2030, as well as China in 2030. Okay, and we go all the way down the list. We get to Ireland, where they now have cold beer, but we don't see the United States.
Right.
All right, so when is the estimate for the United States to reach 80% share? And again, this is based on if trends continue as they have been.
Right.
Okay. Well, we're number 29 on the list, and it's by 2043.
2043.
Now, of course, this does not factor in autonomy, which should change the game here a
Right.
lot, should accelerate it. But we have been kind of slow.
Yeah, yeah. I think the thing that's going to change it uh, this year, even before autonomy, is what I reported on this morning, which is grok in the car.
That will help too.
And
Yeah.
you'll notice that one of the voices is going to be a kid's voice, so that kids can enjoy it. I'm telling you, every kid in the world is going
Yeah.
to have a talking car that they can show their friends. And
Well, if you have a mute car, that's terrible. You're going to
yeah,
be
yeah,
laughed
yeah.
out of
No,
the neighborhood if your car
right,
is mute.
right.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think grok in the car actually will be a game changer. And of course, as awareness grows about robotaxi, FSD in the car will be a game changer as well.
Right.
And maybe they should just provide one, along with the other.
Yeah, yeah.
They should bundle them. You want grok in the car, you also have to subscribe to
With
FSD.
FSD. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So,
There's,
and somebody mentioned the other day that another advantage that Tesla has over Waymo and Uber, is that when you ride a Tesla robotaxi, you can, while you're on the ride, you can get on your app, you can get on an app or on your phone and order one.
yeah.
So therefore you've got a rolling advertisement from which you can place your order immediately to get one. And Uber, Lyft, and Waymo don't have that option.
And with grok in the car, you can just verbally order it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Grok can say, "Are you enjoying the ride? Would you like to buy one of these vehicles?"
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't have to part ways after this ride. We can be together forevermore.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sad to say that New Zealand here is low down on this list, and the folks in
Wow.
Bulgaria, I'm sorry, you're going to be waiting to 2109 before you get to 80%.
Wow.
Sorry, it's blocked here at the bottom, but it'll go away. 2109 before the Bulgarians get to 80% market share. So they've been slow to adopt EVs as well.
And Elon's good buddy there in Italy, she's not going to be helping him out, I guess.
Yeah. Here now is a chart for the BE share for the last 12 months.
Hmm.
And again, Norway at 93%,
Mhm.
Denmark at 59, so they're getting up there. Okay, the Dutch at 37, Singapore at 36, Sweden at 35, Belgium at 33, Finland at 33, Iceland at 31.5,
Hmm.
China at 30.
Hmm.
So the top 10 now are basically about 30% or more BEV market share.
Right. And China, I think, is almost at 50% when you count hybrids.
Yeah, but we don't count hybrids, Randy.
No.
No. The US is 24th on the list at almost 8%. Beaten by the Canadians, by the way, is one for Canada. They're ahead of the US in EV adoption.
Right.
And EVs don't work in cold countries. You know that, right?
Of course they don't.
Yeah, which is why Finland and Iceland and Sweden and Denmark and Norway are low on the list.
At the top of the list.
Yeah. And then the big surprising one here. Oops, sorry, the box has popped up again. But the bottom of the list at number 46 is Japan with a 1.3% market share.
Wow.
Right. And this one's kind of shocking in my opinion because, Elon had a pretty good relationship at one time. This is back in 2010 with the head of Toyota.
Right.
And, things went sour. And as we know now, Toyota, even though they had the Prius, have not remained leaders in EVs.
Right.
They've gone pretty solidly for hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
And Japan now has massively lagged that. And I wrote a post this morning and sort of asked, why do people think that Japan's lagged so bad? And the common response was, well, Japan has some very strong incumbent automakers, Honda and Toyota, et cetera, that have decided a different course of action, that Japan's corporate structure doesn't allow them to innovate as quickly as we have in other nations. And I thought Warren also had some good comments here. He says car dealerships have built personal relationships with customers and deliver great service, as opposed to dealerships here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And customers have a strong tendency to go back to the same dealer. Toyota has about 5,000 dealer locations. Tesla has about 20.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the Japanese market is key cars or K cars, I guess K cars.
Mhm.
Very small, very inexpensive, max 660cc engine. Now, again, an EV would be, you could have a small EV too.
Right.
What was that in China? The 𝐓𝐡𝐮𝐽𝐼𝐸 or something
Right.
that
Right. Right.
yeah. And then the other point here, which is not insignificant, is a large share of population lives in tall buildings without on-site parking.
Right.
And I think somebody also commented that the car ownership rate in Japan is very low.
Yes.
But still, it's a fairly large auto market in the world. So even though ownership is low, there's still, they still are buying cars, and a decent number of them.
Right.
Um, anyway, Japan seems to be a very unique case, but you would think that because they import all of their crude oil, which they then refine into gasoline, that they'd be heavily incentivized
Mhm.
to move more towards EVs.
Well,
But yeah,
Toyota's waiting until they have the solid state battery, which will be in about 2 weeks.
right, exactly. So finally, here's an estimate of the expected time now to go from 20% to 80% BEV. And Indonesia is at the top of the list. They appear to be
Wow.
rapidly adopting EVs,
Maybe they
2.2 years.
maybe they only have 25 cars in the country.
Well, it's a big country, a lot of people.
There's lots
So this,
of something about a lot of islands or something.
yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to have to dig into this one. That's an interesting case for me. Singapore makes more sense. It's just a city state.
Right.
That's easier. Denmark makes sense, and they've got Turkey, Chile, Uruguay, Brazil.
Yeah, Turkey,
Um,
Tesla is now the number one selling vehicle in Turkey, and had a huge month in June.
yeah,
So that's interesting. I,
yep.
I keep failing to see South Korea on any of these lists. Did I miss it? Or does it
Mm,
say Korea?
here's the back half of the list.
It seems
The
like
U.S.
somebody left Korea out of these lists.
Yeah, Korea, based on the data I've seen, seems to be coming on pretty strong.
Yes,
But you're right. I don't see Korea on any of the previous tables that we looked at.
right. And Korea also had a very strong June for Tesla,
Yeah.
as did
Um,
as did the UK, number 3 on that list up there.
yeah. So James Dalma's comment was that any country that has strong automotive makers have
Mm,
been laggards in EV adoption because those companies, the incumbents, have been fighting against EVs.
right,
So it's these countries that don't have automakers have it's allowed them an opportunity to leapfrog everybody else because they don't have the forces working against it,
right.
which is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Although, in a country like Norway where the oil and gas industry is huge, you'd think that would be a natural force working against it, but it hasn't been.
Right.
Right. So anyway, that was interesting for me looking at that data. Um, Randy, I'm going to revise my projections
Uh-huh.
for, I've always talked about how robotaxi is going to destroy car ownership,
Right, right.
right? And you get down to that 70 cents a mile or less, and people will start to ditch their cars and
Hmm.
buy, just take robotaxi rides.
Right. Hmm.
That is still true, I think, but maybe less so now because the cost of buying an EV, this is used EV prices for Tesla,
Okay.
is coming down pretty rapidly.
Uh-huh.
So it's a moving target in terms of the cost that robotaxi has to beat as far as vehicle ownership goes.
Okay.
Right. So that's kind of interesting. There may be a longer tail of vehicle ownership than perhaps I originally assumed as the cost of buying an EV comes down.
Right, right.
We'll
Yeah.
have to see.
My analysis, which you and I might have discussed a week or so ago, is that somewhere around 2028, there will be very few new cars sold. But that doesn't mean there won't be a 10-year or longer period where people are still hanging on to the
Yeah,
last car or purchasing a used car. But the used car prices theoretically would drop quite a bit more.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this works out.
Mhm.
Um, but certainly the cost of buying an EV today has never been lower. It's more accessible to more and more people, and that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
This page was from Tesla's most recent impact report,
Oh yeah.
which is quite lengthy. I've been through a good portion of it, not all of it yet, but um, you don't hear too much discussion about this. I think you and I have talked about this in the past, but they're pointing out that premature deaths from air pollution are avoidable,
Hmm.
right? Air pollution from burning fossil fuels leads to 8 million premature deaths globally each year,
Mm.
accounting for 1 in 5 premature deaths worldwide.
Mm.
Right. So again, from an economic perspective, having, 8 million people die every year on the planet prematurely from air pollution is not a good strategy.
Right, right.
All right. And Tesla's saying again, this is avoidable. So this is another benefit of EVs and autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, I think for Americans, we've kind of lost track of that. Because I'm sitting here in Riverside, California, which 50 years ago, 40 years ago, if I was looking out in July out of my window, I wouldn't be able to see the mountains. But today you can see the mountains.
Yeah.
So the smog problem has gone away for the most part in the United States, but still continues in many, many parts of the world. So
Yeah. It's hard to see here on this chart that shows Europe here in the Mideast. I guess they've got these readings at different places that show good,
mm,
moderate,
yeah,
unhealthy,
yeah.
unhealthy, and very unhealthy. And there's quite a few, orange dots here in Europe.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, very hard to see. There's a lot of green and yellow, but all over Europe there are places where it's still quite unhealthy,
Right,
or unhealthy for sensitive groups and unhealthy there in pink.
right. Hmm.
Um, so plenty of opportunity there still, I think. And I wish we had the similar chart for the US. I didn't see that in the report.
Okay.
And then again, we've talked about this before, but it just bears repeating that um, semi is really important. It may not be a big revenue
Yeah, yeah.
mover for Tesla, although I think it'll be decent long term, plus autonomy. But semis, what they call combination trucks, account for 1.1% of the U.S. fleet, but
Mm,
16.4% of emissions.
yeah,
So you address that, and suddenly you've made a big dent in
right.
vehicle emissions, and also the problem with brake dust
Yeah, exactly.
is very unhealthy. So anyway, that's good. All right, you brought this up earlier, so let's talk about it now.
Oh, okay.
Um, Jesse says here, if the US built as much solar as China did in May, it would free up enough thermal capacity to power every data center on the planet. And then Elon says, maybe there should be a solar gigafactory in America.
Right.
And then the response to that was, make it happen. There's a play here, scaling solar plus batteries plus GPU clusters as fully integrated data centers.
Yeah,
Maybe X could offer a cloud platform using data center building IP from xAI plus energy from Tesla.
right.
And Elon gives a wink.
Right.
What does that
And
mean, Randy?
well, yes, and then you combine that with uh the video I did on well, wait a minute, maybe that's not true. Did I do that or not? I can't remember now. I think actually it's coming up probably on Friday night with Brian White, where he visited the new factory over in Reno near the Gigafactory, or the factory in the Tesla factory in Reno. Yeah, the Gigafactory in Reno, which is the Redwood Industries factory, where he was able to get in on their new product release and get a tour where they're building now used batteries, a combination of used batteries and solar panels that fit on the ground that don't
Yeah.
require supports, and creating a power source between those two that they'll now offer to utilities and data centers, et cetera.
Yeah. No, that'll be great. We need some innovation there. We need to find a way to drive down costs and massively expand solar generation.
But of
Uh,
course, Strobel is on the board. One of Elon's oldest friends was one of the guys who helped start Tesla. So it wouldn't be shocking to me to have Elon and JB talking about the potential for building a full-on gigafactory for solar.
Yeah, let's hope they do.
Yes, I hope they do too.
Um, Tesla charging. So Sawyer says it's officially Q3, which means Tesla is supposed to open the first next-gen V4 supercharger cabinets this quarter, capable of 500 kilowatt charging speeds for cars and 1.2 megawatts for semis. And then faster charging, 30% faster charging for Cybertruck. And for the sexy vehicles, you get charging of 200 miles in 15 minutes. Faster deployments, the V4 cabinet powers 8 posts, which is 2 times the installs per cabinet. So it means more sites coming online faster. One of the things that a lot of people have worried about is, will this inhibit scaling of robotaxi? And it's like, well, Tesla's been thinking about this. They're coming up with ways of introducing charging, making it more scalable as well.
You think they've been thinking about it? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, what a shot.
It's almost like one part of the company was talking to the other part of the company, Randy, which I know in corporate America is a rare thing.
Well, basically 2 years ago, when Grok first started coming out, they asked Grok, they said, what haven't we thought of? And Grok says, oh, you might need more charging stations. Yeah.
So yeah. And then not to get political, I thought this was kind of funny. Trump says, I'm going to send DOGE after Elon. And then comment back, sir, our report found Elon is saving NASA billions and billions of dollars.
Right.
DOGE team. Right. And NASA estimates having SpaceX and Boeing build spacecraft for astronauts save 20 to 30 billion. Well, if you take out Boeing, the savings is probably even higher.
Right.
But anyway,
right.
We can lump the two together. That's fine. They're both important companies.
Right.
And Elon just gives a kind of a flat face there.
Right.
This is also pretty amazing. 29 landings now of a single booster for SpaceX.
Yeah.
The talk about reusability, that saves a lot of money if you have to, if you don't have to build a new one every time.
Heck of a deal.
Yeah, so that's pretty impressive. I don't know how far they're going to take this, but
right.
Maybe we'll get number 30 soon. And then Penny says that Elon is the most consistent person I've ever observed. It's a direct side effect of living a life based truly on upholding a transparent set of goals and principles. And Elon says 100%.
100%.
But despite that, Randy, the end is near.
Which
the question
end?
is which end?
Yes. Yeah, that would be the question. And of course, having said that, I think the end is near of this slideshow, as well as of this particular episode of whatever this channel is called. I've often thought I should have a name for the channel other than my name, but I've never been good at names.
Well, good thing you didn't name yourself. That was done for you.
No, I guess although my parents, it's actually Randolph William, so Randolph, I mean, come on, nobody would go by that name.
It's a great name. It's very rare these days to come across a Randolph.
Very rare these days. All right, CERN, let me remind people that just a little while ago, they could have, if they haven't already, and they can go back and still do it, they could watch Bradford Ferguson. So I'll put that card up right here. And that there will be a part 2 to the Cern Basher show this weekend, along with many, many, many other phenomenal shows. Even on the 4th of July, there will be 3 shows on the 4th of July. So if you're, looking for something exciting to do in between all the fireworks, you could come into the house and check out, one of these shows.
And by the way, I should just add that I had the opportunity in Austin to meet Bradford in person for the first time. Great guy. Really enjoyed meeting with him.
It's cool.
So yeah, definitely watch the video with Bradford.
Yeah, 100%. All right, sir, let's get on to number 2, and we'll just say for now to everybody else, it's been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.